The Old Man Who Made Trees Bloom, by Japanese Folktales. Brought to you by TellStory.net, stories from around the world. In a peaceful village nestled among rolling hills, there lived two old men who were as different as spring and winter. The first, named Takeshi, was known throughout the village for his gentle heart and generous spirit. Though he owned little more than a small cottage and a tiny garden, he always shared what he had with those in need. His neighbor Kenji possessed a much larger house and fertile lands, but his heart was as hard as stone. He hoarded his wealth jealously and looked upon poor Takeshi with constant scorn and envy, despite having so much more. One cold winter morning, as Takeshi was tending to his small vegetable patch, he heard a faint whimpering coming from the nearby forest. Following the sound, he discovered a small white dog, barely more than a puppy, shivering beneath a snow-covered pine tree. The little creature was so thin that its ribs showed through its matted fur, and its dark eyes were filled with hunger and fear.
"Oh, you poor little one. Where did you come from?"
The dog cowered at first, but something in Takeshi's voice calmed its fears. Slowly, cautiously, it approached and sniffed his outstretched fingers.
"Come with me. I don't have much, but I'll share what I can."
He scooped up the trembling dog and carried it home, where he immediately set about warming it by the fire and sharing his own meager bowl of rice. His wife, Hanako, though they could barely feed themselves, welcomed the little dog with the same warmth her husband had shown.
"What shall we call him?"
Watching as the dog ate hungrily but gratefully.
"How about Shiro?"
Noting the dog's white coat that gleamed like fresh snow now that it was clean and dry. From that day forward, Shiro became their beloved companion. Though Takeshi and Hanako had little money for proper dog food, they shared every meal with their new friend. Shiro, in return, showed them endless loyalty and affection, following Takeshi everywhere he went and sleeping at the foot of their bed each night. Meanwhile, Kenji watched this display of kindness with growing irritation.
Foolish old man, wasting food on a worthless stray when he can barely feed himself. No wonder he stays poor.
Spring arrived, and with it came an extraordinary discovery. One morning, as Takeshi was working in his garden with Shiro playing nearby, the little dog began pawing excitedly at a particular spot in the earth.
"What is it, Shiro? What have you found?"
Shiro barked once and began digging furiously, his tail wagging with unusual excitement. Curious, Takeshi knelt down and helped dig where Shiro had indicated. To his amazement, his fingers struck something hard and metallic. As he dug deeper, he uncovered an old wooden chest filled with gold coins, precious jewels, and silver ornaments, a treasure beyond his wildest dreams.
"Hanako, come quickly."
When his wife saw the treasure, she gasped and covered her mouth with her hands.
"But Takeshi, where could this have come from?"
"It must have been buried here long ago, and our clever little friend somehow knew it was here."
Word of the discovery spread quickly through the village. When Kenji heard about his neighbor's good fortune, his face turned purple with rage and envy.
That treasure should be mine. I have more land, more crops, more of everything. Why should that fool get such luck?
That very evening, Kenji appeared at Takeshi's door with a forced smile and honeyed words.
My dear neighbor, I've been thinking about your remarkable good fortune. That wonderful dog of yours. Perhaps you would consider lending him to me for a few days? I'm sure there must be more treasure buried in my yard as well.
Takeshi's kind heart made it difficult for him to refuse anyone, even someone as unpleasant as Kenji.
"Well, I suppose if Shiro doesn't mind."
Excellent. I'll take good care of him, I promise.
But Kenji's promises were as worthless as autumn leaves. The moment he had Shiro in his yard, he commanded the dog to find treasure. When Shiro, confused and frightened by the harsh treatment, failed to locate anything of value. Kenji's temper exploded.
Useless mutt. Find me gold or I'll.
Desperate to escape the angry man, Shiro began digging frantically at random spots throughout Kenji's garden. But instead of treasure, each hole revealed only rocks, broken pottery, and foul-smelling waste that had been buried there years before. Kenji's rage knew no bounds. In his fury, he picked up a heavy garden tool and, despite Shiro's pitiful yelping, struck the innocent animal down. When Takashi came to retrieve his beloved companion the next morning, Kenji met him at the gate with crocodile tears and false sorrow.
Oh, my dear neighbor, such a terrible accident. Your little dog must have eaten something poisonous in my garden. I found him this morning, poor creature. I'm so very sorry for your loss.
Takashi's heart shattered like glass. He knew Kenji was lying. He could see it in the man's shifting eyes and nervous manner. But poor Shiro was already gone. With tears streaming down his face, Takashi took his faithful friend's body home and buried him beneath the old cherry tree in his garden, the very spot where they had first played together. Day after day, Takashi sat beside Shiro's grave, mourning the loss of his loyal companion. But on the 7th day after Shiro's death, something miraculous occurred. The old cherry tree, which had been barren and seemingly dead for years, suddenly burst into the most magnificent bloom anyone had ever seen. Its branches, which had been bare and brittle, now cascaded with thousands of pink and white blossoms that seemed to glow with their own inner light.
Look, Hanako. It's as if Shiro's spirit has brought new life to our old tree.
The sight was so beautiful that people came from miles around to see the miraculous cherry tree. As they stood beneath its blooming branches, they felt their hearts lift with joy and hope. The very air seemed sweeter, filled with the delicate fragrance of the impossible blossoms. But the miracles were only beginning. That night, Takashi dreamed of Shiro, who appeared to him as radiant and healthy as ever.
Dear master, cut down the cherry tree and make a mortar from its wood. Use it to pound rice, and you will see wonders.
When Takashi awoke, he was reluctant to cut down the beautiful tree, but his faith in Shiro was absolute. With reverent care, he harvested wood from the tree and crafted it into a mortar and pestle. The first time he and Hanako used it to pound rice for their evening meal, the rice multiplied miraculously in the bowl. What had been enough for one became enough for 10, and each grain was perfectly white and delicious.
Shiro is still taking care of us.
Word of this new miracle reached Kenji's ears, and once again, his envy consumed him like fire. He marched to Takashi's house and demanded to borrow the magical mortar.
You've had enough good fortune. It's time someone else had a turn.
Again, Takashi's kind nature made him unable to refuse, even though his heart warned him against it.
Please be careful with it. It was made from Shiro's tree.
But Kenji cared nothing for sentimentality or reverence. He took the mortar home and immediately began pounding rice with greedy enthusiasm, expecting it to multiply into a feast. Instead, the rice turned into foul-smelling paste, and the beautiful wooden mortar cracked and splintered beyond repair. In his rage, Kenji threw the broken pieces into his fire, destroying the last physical remnant of Takashi's miraculous tree. When Takashi discovered what had happened, he wept bitterly. But even in his grief, he carefully gathered the ashes from Kenji's fireplace, feeling somehow that they still contained a trace of Shiro's spirit. That night, Shiro appeared to Takashi in another dream.
Do not despair, dear master. Take my ashes and scatter them on any dead tree, and it will bloom more beautifully than ever before.
The next morning, Takashi took a handful of the precious ashes and approached a withered plum tree at the edge of his garden. As he gently scattered the ashes over its bare branches, the tree immediately burst into glorious bloom, its flowers so numerous and bright they seemed like stars fallen to earth. News of this latest miracle spread like wildfire. When the local daimyo, the feudal lord of the region, heard about the old man who could make dead trees bloom, he summoned Takashi to his castle.
If this power is real, then you shall demonstrate it for me. I have an ancient cherry tree in my courtyard that has been dead for a decade. If you can make it bloom, I will reward you greatly.
Takashi approached the massive dead tree with reverence, thinking of his beloved Shiro. As he scattered the magical ashes over its gnarled branches, the tree exploded into the most spectacular display of cherry blossoms anyone had ever witnessed. The entire courtyard filled with pink and white petals that danced on the breeze like snow, and the fragrance was so heavenly that everyone present felt their spirits lift with joy. The daimyo was so delighted that he declared Takashi to be Hanasaka Jizan, the old man who makes flowers bloom. He rewarded him with gold, silk, and a position of honor in his court. Meanwhile, Kenji, hearing of his neighbor's latest triumph, decided to try the same trick. He gathered ordinary ashes from his fireplace and presented himself to the daimyo, claiming he too could make trees bloom.
Behold, my lord,
throwing his ashes at another dead tree in the courtyard. But instead of blooming, the tree remained as dead as before, and the ashes blew back into the daimyo's face, making him cough and sputter with indignation.
Imposter! Guards, arrest this man for his deception!
Kenji was banished from the province in disgrace, while Takashi returned home to live in comfort and honor with his wife. But more than the wealth and recognition, what brought Takashi the greatest joy was knowing that Shiro's spirit lived on, bringing beauty and wonder to the world through the magical blossoms that appeared wherever he scattered the precious ashes. And so the story of Hanasaka Jizan, the old man who made flowers bloom, was told throughout the land, reminding all who heard it that kindness and compassion bring rewards far greater than any treasure.